This is Tony Gerard, Echo Summit Property Management, and today we're going to speak on the Section 8 program. This is not going to be an in-depth discussion, this is going to be a high-level overview of what the program entails. Section 8, as a rule, is unfortunately oftentimes misunderstood. People hear war stories about what the program does, what kind of people are on it. There's an entitlement program, generational, they destroy properties. Is there a certain element of truth to this? There is, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that this program actually helps. But before I get into that, let me back up and really explain what is the Section 8 program. The technical term for it is the Housing Choice Voucher Program, otherwise known as HCVP. It is a federally sponsored program, and it's sponsored by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And the Section 8 term comes from the section of the legislation that put this program forward. There are two types of Section 8 programs. There are project-based programs and there are tenant-based programs. We're not going to speak about the project-based programs because those focus on properties or buildings that are designated exclusively as Section 8. So the vouchers go with the building versus the person. What we're going to speak about here are the tenant-based voucher program. The tenant-based voucher program is usually generated through a lottery, and when the tenant is awarded their voucher, it enables them to go anywhere in the United States. And it entitles them, and I'm sorry if I've used the word entitlement, but it entitles them to receive as a portion of their rent is subsidized by the United States government because they're low income. Now, low income takes on several different definitions, which I'll get into, but on average, the U.S. government usually subsidizes approximately 70% of the rent that the tenant is responsible for. The tenant is then responsible for making up the difference. When a tenant moves into a particular geography, let's say, and it usually is within a county area, the rent that is charged is based on what we call the fair market value. It is determined locally through different surveys and studies. So you as an owner, if you choose to accept Section 8 tenants, cannot charge more for that particular like property with 2-bedroom, 1-bath, for example, than the fair market rent would allow. So if it says it's $700, you can't charge $750. It's $700. You as a landlord have an option here. You may choose not to accept Section 8 tenants, period. One of the few times you can refuse types of people. This is a group that you are by law entitled to refuse. But recognize this, that while the Section 8 program is mandated at a federal level, it is run at a local level, and there are many different flavors of Section 8. There may be, let's use Denver as an example. There's the Denver Housing Authority. There's the Mental Health Center of Denver. There is the VA portion. There's also the Coalition for the Homeless. There are different flavors, and each of those flavors have tweaked and adjusted their rules as well. You'll know this because each tenant who is on the program, or prospective tenant who is on this program, will present you with what is called a Housing Assistance Program voucher, otherwise known as a HAP contract. Not all HAP contracts read exactly the same. And so, like I said, the HAP contract for the Denver Housing Authority may be different than the HAP contract for the Veterans Administration. And you have to just recognize those as if you're going to accept them. Assuming you accept the tenant, and again, the selection criteria for a Section 8 tenant for me or for our organization is the same as if I was accepting a tenant who is not on the program. If they don't pass the background check, if they've had evictions in the past, etc., and it doesn't meet the formalized criteria that you present, you are not obligated to accept them. They don't have a special selection criteria just for them. Let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of Section 8. Again, this goes back to my initial opening statement that there are some views or preconceived notions of what the program is or what it isn't. Let's be clear on what it is. It's partially a guaranteed form of revenue for you as a landlord. It could be as high as 100% of the rent could be coming to you from a Section 8 tenant. Next piece is there are a number of rules that Section 8 tenants must abide by. If they do not follow those rules, then they actually can put their Section 8 voucher in jeopardy. They may lose their voucher, and furthermore, by the terms and conditions of the voucher, you may be obligated to evict them from your property if they break the rules of that Section 8. To help you along the way, there are caseworkers who work with the tenants in the various different areas of the government. And while these caseworkers are not here to help you and the tenant on rental disagreements or to interpret rental law, the Section 8 caseworker can help facilitate and actually can help you as a landlord make the tenant understand things that you may not be able to get across. So they can help influence behaviors, etc., so that everybody stays in sync. The final piece of this, as you would with any tenant, if you have the right to not renew a lease when the lease is coming up for is expiring and coming up for potential renewal. And you do not need to provide a reason why you are not choosing to renew that lease. But you do that with any tenant, yours or Section 8. But here are the cons now related to this. Tenants who are classified as low income their classification results from a lot of different reasons. It could be social, it could be economic, family, physical, mental, a lot of different reasons. And you really want to understand that when you're going to accept Section 8, you can't pick and choose what Section 8 you're going to take. You either take all of Section 8 or none. And so, for example, if you take on Section 8 and let's say it's the Mental Health Center of Denver, the people that qualify and work through the Mental Health Center of Denver, by the virtue of its name, have certain disabilities that make them low income. And so you as a landlord or as an owner, and you're accepting Section 8 and you have a Mental Health Center of Denver tenant, just recognize that you may be dealing with someone that may have more challenges or more issues that you have to contend with than maybe somebody who's on Denver housing or not. But these are just considerations you have to have, and they're part of the broader consideration of are you going to take Section 8 or not. Some of my best tenants have been across all different variations of Section 8, and they've been with me for a very long time with no problems. Some of my worst tenants are not on Section 8 programs and have caused more trouble than I care to think. So again, people are people, and it doesn't matter if they're on a program or not. Your selection criteria is what's going to override this at the end of the day. The final component of this is you really need to consider that membership has its privileges. And I know it sounds like a credit card commercial here, but as a Section 8 participant, they're not just getting the rent subsidy. Section 8 tenants are also provided other government services, such as free legal assistance. So it costs them nothing to go to get legal assistance, whereas you as the landlord, it's going to cost you money to go to get legal assistance. So you really want to consider this, especially if you get into a disagreement. Where do you draw the line on this? Another component of this is there are special processes that have to be considered with a Section 8 person around, for example, say they don't pay their portion of the Section 8, their rent. Or if you're not going to renew, or they're not complying, you've got certain processes you must follow. Should you not follow these processes, it can be a very, very expensive and painful experience to go through. So make sure that either you or the management company that you were to hire understands how those processes work so that you're not exposed when something were to go wrong. For this or other questions or topics, please go to www.echo-summit.com. Thank you very much.